Hello.
Hello, Miss Paige.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Setting the mood.
We are
I'm
fantastic.
loving this.
I'm loving that shirt.
I'm feeling the background, everything.
Thank you. My partner makes tie-dye shirts and they're so fun. Like he's a banjoist in what he does. And he made banjo ones.
Oh my God, it's so cool.
I love this. It feels like I'm in a massage parlor in your room.
Bedroom was the vibe of camping. We were like, how can we make it feel like camping? And that's what we did. And my therapy office, actually, I have a big tree mural in the background there too. And I love it so much. People are always commenting. They're like, I feel like I come into this office and there's like, we're just chilling on a patio. I was like, that was the vibe.
Yeah. I'm loving it. I'm like, I can hear rain. I don't know if it's raining, but I'm like, ooh, the rain, the smell of the forest.
Mm-hmm. Don't you see the campfire in the corner? I saw the smoke coming up. We're good.
Right?
How are y'all doing?
We are awesome. Thank you for being so flexible. I was so excited when you said you could do it because you were so far out in the summer. And I was like, Dirty Skittles is going to love her some Paige. Love her.
I love it.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad it worked out. Yeah, it's so lovely to meet you.
Look, she's going to lay back. She's going to take a little nap.
Get comfy. She's like, let me just settle in. We're ready.
I love getting cozy. And it's so funny. The majority of the clothes I wear, people, like, I don't get, oh, that looks really cool. It's always, you look so comfortable. And I'm always like, I am. So whether that was out of criticism or not, I'm like, you're right. I am so comfortable.
My friends tease me because they're like, oh, we're back home. Sharon's going to put her comfy pants on. I like live in like super comfy, like yoga pants, like the hoodie, the hat. Like, I'm like, look, I'm just here to be myself and feel good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need the fancy or tight jeans.
I work from home. I wear sweats 24/7. All right. I'm cool.
Yeah.
Like, you don't like it? You see me from the top. We're good.
Yup.
You would have been so excited. We went and saw Wanda Sykes last night in Rochester.
How was that?
Oh my God. She was so funny. But I'm so exhausted because it's 2 hours away. So we drove up last night, stayed, drove home. I left there at 6:30 this morning. We got home. Skittles, what time did I text you? Like, I think we got home at 9. And then we record all day. So I've had like 4 coffees, a Coke, and now I'm having some water because I had the shakes. So we're good.
You're wired up. You're ready to go.
Not the best self-care, but you know what? In the moment I'm good.
It's so good when we can do these different like activities that are outside of our norm. That is so like fulfilling for our mental health. But then also it's like, but now I don't get as much sleep or some of our other like routine stuff, but it's doing it for the fun.
Yeah, need it sometimes. We shake things up.
We do. So do you want to do the intro or do you want me to do it?
Go for it. You're on a roll.
I'm on a roll. Ready?
Ready.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back to another episode of Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. Today we have an amazing guest, Paige. Welcome, Paige. And amazing partner in crime, Dirty Skittles.
Woohoo! We need like a track. You know what I'm saying? With people cheering.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll get right on that with the editor. Yeah. Can you get a cheering track?
Just record me. I'll keep doing different, voices. Well, welcome. How's your day? How's it started so far?
Which one of us?
Yeah. I'm going to let Paige go because she already knows how my day's been.
Yeah. We just heard about your crazy caffeine.
I just got up because last night I was just doing gardening stuff and I got really caught up in it. And so I just kept going until way later than usual. And because here in BC, it's actually only like 9 a.m. still. So.
Whoa. What kind of gardening stuff?
Oh, I was just planting all of like the things that I'm trying to get for like seedlings for my balcony. So this year I decided I'm going to go all out and get lots of little veggies and like lavender and tons of different little bits and pieces out there. So I have I have a hutch inside of my house that we've turned into a greenhouse as well.
Nice.
So we're going to have little seedlings in there so that I can plant them on the balcony later. So that's what I was up to all day yesterday.
That's really cool. My son's school today for Earth, like they're calling the Earth Day thing. We got to go, they have a garden and he's in kindergarten. And we got to go to the garden and buy seedlings and different kinds of plants. So I just went and got like 4 different kinds of tomato plant, cucumbers, like scallions, all kinds of stuff. So I'm very excited to, it's his plants, you know?
That's so fun. I'm so thankful for the gardening knowledge my mom gave to me when I was younger, because we had a massive garden. That's where we got most of our fruit and veggies.
That's awesome.
So can you grow tomatoes off of your balcony?
So my balcony is super duper windy, so the poor tomatoes get tossed a little bit too much. Go on some adventures out there. So this year I was like, okay, the peppers seem to do okay out there. So we'll have the peppers and all that jazz, but the poor tomatoes, I'm probably like, they're probably getting thrown off the balcony. I wouldn't be surprised.
Can you imagine walking by and then all of a sudden, like a tomato?
It just reminds me of like that movie, like, or the TV series of Looney Tunes, and when everybody didn't like something or didn't think it was funny, like
they throw tomatoes.
And like, could you imagine walking by and being like, I thought it was hilarious. Universe is just tossing tomatoes.
I'm so excited that you're here, Paige. When we connected about a month ago, just your journey and just everything you're doing for the community. And tell us about you. Tell us about, your life.
Yeah, my life is surrounded around like mental health and well-being, not only for the other people, but for myself too. I have been in this, or I was a psych nurse since 2009. And actually just officially this month, I am no longer a nurse. I was able to remove that off of the resume, and I'm no longer a registered nurse, but I am a clinical counselor. And that journey started in 2019 when I decided to go back to school, which I never thought I was going to do. I was like, I'm going to be a psych nurse for life. And then suddenly I realized the healthcare system was really stressful. Shocker. I went back to school in 2019. So pre-pandemic shenanigans. So I already knew I was planning on exiting at the time. And it's only become more and more of a hostile work environment over the years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I can't imagine how stressful that would have been. How long did you say you did it for?
15 years. 15 years. Yeah, 2009. And then my last shift I ever picked up was April of last year. And so of April 2023 was the last shift I've picked up. So it shifted and changed in ways that I never thought it was going to happen. Being a nurse was a sustainable career previously. And nowadays, you're not seeing a lot of people nursing to retirement. It's nursing, getting a side hustle, and then completely separating and severing that tie.
Yeah. What drove you to that industry?
Yeah, what got me into the industry was I was one of like the rebel kids. I was like one of the outcast kids. And I grew up in a very small town of like 800 people. And so a lot of the kids I got along with were really struggling with their mental health. Now, of course, me as an adult looking back, I was like, oh, they were probably going through some pretty traumatic childhood stuff. And they were in and out of hospitals, and they would be complaining about their psych nurses, saying how much of a bitchs they were. And I was like, wait a minute. I don't have to become a doctor to work with people with their mental health. That's dope. And so as of grade 9, I knew I wanted to be a psych nurse because my friends were in and out. Wow. I wanted to be the cool psych nurse and the one who made people actually feel happy, not feel controlled.
Wow. Kudos to you. So when you first started that journey, was it rewarding? Like, were you like, oh, this is exactly where I want to be? Wow. So from 9 years old, you get there and you're like, this is it. Can I ask you questions about it?
Absolutely. Okay? Yeah, it was grade 9. It was grade 9 when I went into it. Yeah.
That makes more sense. I'm like, damn, at 9 years old? Like, holy shit.
At 9, I was so convinced I was going to be a famous rock star, which I've had different times of doing music in my life, but I didn't ever hit stardom.
So,
but yeah, for sure, ask questions.
What I wanted to get to, right? So you start this industry. What was your day-to-day like? What did you do? How did it start? What was the day in the life of psych nurse?
Yeah. So I was in a pretty small community when I first started. So it was only a 10-bed unit, which was great, especially for like a newbie nurse. So I would get on shift. We would do shift change reports. I would go prepare the medications that were the morning medications. We'd touch base with the psychiatrist, give him a lowdown on what the day was looking like. And then often throughout the day, we'd be doing the other in-between tasks of like providing medications, helping them get certain things sorted out for their like home lives. I would be able to do some counseling related work and also lots of admission and discharge stuff and just chatting with the physicians and things. But my favorite part then and always has been my interactions with the patients and being able to kind of get into those deeper things that are holding them back from being able to live the lives that they were really wanting to live. And yeah, I absolutely loved it for quite some time. And then I moved in 2016. Yeah, 2016 to Kelowna, where it was a much bigger space. Well, the space I originally went into was Psych Emerge. And so that was a very different experience because the people, when they'd come in crisis, and I would be doing the assessments and working with the physicians to choose what was their next path. So I'd provide medications, I would do an interview, I would admit or help the person find access to resources in the communities. But even at that time period, at that mark, that's when the opioid crisis started really growing. And alongside the opioid crisis has also been like a huge increase in stimulant use, especially meth on the West Coast for sure. And I know that it's a little bit of everywhere, but stimulants also increase our risk of violence in the workplace. And there's only so much we can do when a person continues to be struggling in their cycle of addiction. And so we'd have people returning over and over again. And as much as I wanted to be able to feel the same genuine support every single admission, something wears on you when you know that what you're doing is not hitting the mark. And I know it's not just the patient. It's also the fact that our systems don't have enough of the things in place for people to have longevity in their health. And so with counseling, I can work alongside a person and we can create a plan together. They feel the full autonomy of it. It's not just focused around medication. It's focused around so much more. And I love to empower that autonomy in people, which a hospital environment just can't do. It's not the same. Because also because of like increases in lawsuits and people being more mindful of things as well in like patient care, hospitals started to cover their butts. The amount of paperwork I was doing was unbelievable. And for some reason at the hospital here, they kept thinking that like on psych, we don't do anything apparently. So they kept giving us the trials of the new paperwork. So we were trying to figure out like it took an hour and a half to do an admission on our floor, while the pediatric floor for the kiddos, 15 minutes is what was told to me. I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
Wow. So how did you take care of yourself through that? Because I feel like, and this might be coming just from a completely like, narrow point of view, but I feel like I would be a little bit of my heart would go out to everybody I talk to. So if I hear something sad, like how do you cope with that? How do you take care of yourself at the end of a workday?
Totally. And that was one of the things that people didn't really talk about for us in the mental health world. I'm just snag a glass of water. Because I actually had a professor in university say to my class, "You're about to be a psych nurse. You no longer get to have a mental illness."
No way. No way.
Should we call him out? Fuck that professor.
Fuck that professor. Really. It's probably a good thing
I love the reaction on your faces of clear, like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't become a robot. Like you're not programmed now to never have feelings and emotions and thoughts. That's crazy.
So I just thought you just don't feel, and if you did feel that there was something wrong with you. And so that for me was a very telling sign of what the culture of healthcare really truly can have and hold, is that we are expected to be professionals always. Even in our contracts that we sign, most hospitals have something in their contract that is aligned with, you can't shit talk them. And you can't, and you always have to show up for your profession. And that's the same with a lot of our regulatory bodies too. We have to put on the persona of a professional all of the time, inside of work and outside of work. And as much as I agree with maintaining like respect for the career, I do not agree that we suddenly become inhuman.
Right.
It reminds me of like a very militant point of view, right? Like you are this thing now and you can't have emotions and you can't like...
And you are a robot and you will do as I say and not as I do.
Yeah,
and
just forget about yourself.
Yeah. Caregivers, but we're not allowed to care.
Right. Not about yourself, at least. Never about yourself.
Definitely not about us. No, we have to be self-sacrificing for life.
Right. How frustrating. Oh my
gosh. To answer your original question, I did not take care of myself.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was supposed to.
And when did you start taking care of yourself? As soon as you left the profession?
It was actually in 2020 when I had a workplace mental health injury and went off work for 10 months. I had a moment where it was a shift that I was feeling good about. It was the beginning of January. I was on with 2 other badass nurses, stepped into the shift, and I just had this one patient interaction for a really prolonged period of time. And it actually, something switched in my brain where my fight or flight was activated to a point that I'd never experienced. And looking back, I don't actually think I'd ever experienced anger. I think anger was an emotion that I had shoved very deeply down that I wasn't allowed to have. I wasn't allowed to get upset. I'm like a sugar and spice and everything nice because I'm a girl. And so there was this inner dialogue of like, we're not angry people, like those kinds of things. And did I know it at the time? No, because I didn't listen to my inner world before. I very much ignored it. And so, yeah, it wasn't until I hit a point where I had no option but to take care of myself where I started to.
Right. What lessons did you learn in the beginning of taking care of yourself?
Oh, that it is, if you don't know that you're allowed to feel better, if you don't know that you're allowed to take care of yourself, there is a whole heck of a lot of shame and guilt that comes along with taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing that I learned right there. I knew I couldn't function. I couldn't even think about mental health. I couldn't talk about it, couldn't think about it, couldn't even mention the hospital without going into a panic attack. I was completely debilitated by my mental health. I had extremely high symptoms of PTSD at that time. And the thing that kept going on in my head was and I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, but the loop that went back in my head was they didn't even hit you. What's wrong with you? Because I wasn't physically assaulted, I completely minimized my body's response to a traumatic event.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that, did you go into therapy for yourself?
Yes. So I'd already been seeing a therapist. I guess that was one of my elements of self-care, was that I did start seeing a therapist, I think a year before that incident, because I knew I didn't feel good. I didn't know what I needed, but I just thought maybe I just need a career change. So that's why I was like, oh, let's go back to school. It'll be dope. But anyways, with my counselor, I got in touch with her immediately and I said, something's wrong and I don't know what it is. And so I got connected with her and she started doing eye movement desensitization and reprocessing with me, or EMDR. And then after me talking with the disability management team over and over and regurgitating my story to so many people, which was re-traumatizing within itself, as I'm like panic attacking on the phone every single person. But eventually they hooked me up with an occupational therapist and she and I did exposure therapy together. And so that all was going on right when the pandemic started too. So then there was that all at the same time. And then the guilt and shame associated with not being beside my coworkers in that event also then sunk in. And so really having to kind of process through suddenly I'm feeling anger and not knowing what to do and being like, what is this? This feels horrid.
Right. That is crazy.
That is so crazy. And I'm sure like with your coworkers, you guys would trauma bond, right? Like trying to just help each other out of those difficult situations, because if you're not allowed to talk about it and you're not allowed to feel it, then like, how do they expect you to not have some sort of mental health crisis because of that, right? Like, I know from my own experience, not talking about it, not being able to find my voice or find my footing and just holding it all in was probably worse for me than if I'd just been able to find my voice to begin with. But I'm so happy that you were able to get the help that you needed.
Yes, because so many don't. So many people don't get the help they needed because they didn't fill out the right paperwork when it happened. So because I knew right away something was wrong, I just sat down, did the claim, did the incident report, because there's paperwork that people have to do. You have to make the call, you have to do the report, you have to do all these different things. And I did that. And I reached out to my manager to let her know that I wouldn't be at my next shift and what happened. And the response was the one that in the nursing world, we always make fun of this because management often says, well, what could you have done better? Is usually their response is like, well, where was your learning opportunity? It's like, too soon, girlfriend. Too soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fact that I'm emailing you right now through tears is very telling about how I'm feeling. But she gave me a very minimizing response to what had occurred. One of the elements that prompted the dysregulation in the person that the patient interaction was they wanted something from their purse, but it was filled with exposed needles. And because of that, I said, I'm so sorry, but like, it's just too dangerous for me to go in there. And that for her was too much for her system to take. And that's where it spiraled. But my manager, their response was, we'll just use the stick-proof gloves. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll just bring the bag to you next time. No problem. You can use them. I have the right to refuse unsafe work. I don't know about you, but I do.
Yeah. Wow. Holy shit. Okay. So you kind of are like propelled into this journey now, right? You're switching careers. Did you stay going in school through the pandemic? Were you able to do it remotely and keep doing all of that?
Yeah. Because mine luckily was all fully remote from the beginning because I wanted to be able to continue nursing throughout my schooling. And so, I was doing my schooling I was doing my master's at the same time as I was doing all my trauma healing.
Wow. That's tough.
Was really hard. It was a really hard time period. And yet I look back and I also think like being a nurse prepares you for hard things at the same time. So instead of allowing myself to just rest, which would have been likely much better serving for me, I went harder because I was almost trying to prove something to myself so that like I could still feel productive and still feel like I was doing something, even though really my worth should not be being held to what I can produce anyways.
No.
Right. This is the second. Are you noticing a theme so far?
Yeah.
G-Rex for this? It's like the second person we've talked to today where it feels like there's this like fiber of like, how do we define our worth and productivity? Like, what does productivity mean? Because it doesn't have to be, what your employer expects of you or, how much money are you making? Like there is something there where
it's the substance of life, right? Because the only person you need to prove it to is you. You don't need to be out there proving it to somebody else. As long as you're feeling better inside, you know that you're a good person, that you belong to society, that you're doing stuff that makes you happy. That's all that should really matter, right? Like those outside forces shouldn't really affect how you live your day-to-day life. Okay, I'm going to preface this, right? Probably should have learned this before I was 60, but I'm going to tell you between the time that I was 59, the very next day I turned 60. When I turned 60, I was like, I don't fucking care. I don't care what people think about me, right? And so for our listeners, like, do shit that makes you happy, not somebody else, right? Do it for you. And don't wait until you're 60 to figure that out. Because if I'd figured that out in my 40s, I'd probably be in a different place in my life. But, I'm really happy, Paige, that you were able to do that for you, right? Because workplaces can be so hard on you, right? And they can take so much life out of you. And people don't realize how hostile those environments can be. And it's not just in the nursing field. It is across the board in every type of work experience. And I think that people don't realize that, there's help out there that you can get. And there's not just one type of therapy. Like Dirty Skills likes to call it, speed date your therapist.
Speed date.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. Ask the important shit up front before. I mean, for me, I went to 3 therapists. The third one was the one that it made sense. It worked. But the very first one I went to, I remember just being like too shy. Like I thought, oh, if I wasn't fulfilled or getting something out of it, it was me. There was something wrong with me. Like I'm just not ready for it, or whatever. And I put it on a pause. And then I went to the second one and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be more aggressive because I know kind of what you were saying, where I knew something was not right, but I didn't know what it was. So I needed to talk to somebody. So immediately the second one, I speed dated them. I'm like, okay, can you talk to me about this, that? And that's the way to do it, because they were upfront and honest. They were like, actually, no, that's not where I specialize. But, here's this other person. Maybe try reaching out to them. And boom, that was the one. I love her to death. But
oh, that's so good that you knew to continue. Like, because it is so awful when we go to see someone that words Paige. Sometimes it takes me a moment to organize them in there. When we're seeking support, we're in such a vulnerable position because we're not often looking for counselors or mental health support when we're feeling great. It's not usually our go-to. And so there's that's the level of vulnerability. And I feel like there's this idea that every therapist knows how to treat and support everything that comes through their doors. And that's, I have quite a diverse range of what I can work with because of my psych nursing background. So I'm incredibly grateful. But there are so many areas of specialization that exist, and finding the right match for you can be such a personality related thing as well. Because if I don't vibe with their personality, if their personality doesn't make me feel safe enough to be vulnerable, even if it's just awkwardness within itself, is something saying something's not matching up here.
Right.
It's just an emotion being like, I feel uncomfortable. And if their space doesn't make you feel comfortable, or their personality doesn't just bring that auto comfort, then it's going to be so much harder. You're not going to be able to dive deeper into that stuff because your body's saying no.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That first therapist, I didn't feel comfortable. And I think it related to not feeling safe. So I just remember them giving a bunch of paperwork, like, oh, here's this paper. It'll help you get through that. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But it didn't stick. It was the last one. I felt safe. I felt comfortable. We meshed like our personalities. And I was able to be myself and be vulnerable and be open. And the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. And like with me, like my first therapist, like she just wanted me to go to a bunch of groups. Okay. I don't want to be in a group session, right? I need to just talk to one person. Like, don't push me off onto somebody else, because I'm already having a hard enough time finding my own fucking voice, right? To tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
And thankfully for me, because I live in a really remote area, I don't have to go and see them face to face. I can do it over the internet, which is perfect for me, right? But that may not work for everybody else. But there are people out there that can help. And if you're really stuck and you're feeling in a very vulnerable position, there's phone numbers you can call. Like here in the States, you can call 988. I believe that's the same number in Canada. And
we just implemented that like a couple months ago in Canada. Yes, 988.
And it's such a great resource, right? You don't have to give your name. The person on the other end is super empathetic. They get you the resources you need, because the very next day for me, I was in therapy. I didn't really like my therapist, went on to a second therapist. By the third therapist, I'm stuck. I see her twice a week still. Such a better place. And I'm a firm believer in therapy. And I do different kinds of therapies too. So I do a little hypnosis too. I'm doing that for sleep now because insomnia sucks. Okay. Just going to tell you, it sucks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But just another kick in the nuts.
It is.
You're not feeling good. And guess what? You don't ever get to sleep.
And now you can never escape it. Now you can just never escape it ever. Have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck.
Deuces. Hope you
best
function
wishes
tomorrow.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So you transition into this. First, one thing I don't want to forget to say, kudos to you, right? Because you had this career. You knew, I mean, you started it because you were passionate about talking with people, but you're in this career, you have a traumatic event, it causes a shift in yourself, in your life, everything. But instead of completely shying away from anything having to do with this, you still pursued that kind of core passion of still working with people. So I just wanted to say kudos, because I know I probably would have pulled completely away. I'm a very extreme personality. I would be like, nope, fuck everything having to do with that. I'm never going back there. But I that's not necessarily the right path, right? So,
but I love that acknowledgement of it, because that's like our fight or flight kicking in, right? Like, and
right.
For me, although I never really experienced anger, I had experienced the urgency associated with the fight response. So a fight response for me is do something. And so I just did a bunch of things to try and tell the body, like, look, we're doing the things.
I'm scratching that itch. I'm doing it.
Yes. And so for me, I'm more lean into like the fight response versus the flight response. That's just how my nervous system goes. And I already had kind of determined I was probably going to be specializing in supporting healthcare providers before I even started my schooling. After that workplace incident, the most healing thing that I did was, once I settled into the comfortability of being a human being and giving myself compassion and working through that inner dialogue of I need something to prove, I shared my story in a blog post. And I'm even just tearing up, even just thinking about it, because the response I got from other nurses who felt heard, because no one had shared what they had went through with me. I thought I was flawed. I thought I was broken because I didn't know other people's story. And that, the moment when someone said to me, if this could happen to you, it can happen to anyone, it reminded me of how fucking badass I actually am.
You are complete badass.
Complete badass. And that comment from that person and all of the other people who shared their journeys and their stories with me sparked a fire in me that now there is no doubt in my mind in any way, shape, or form that I will change the culture of healthcare and I will bring humanity to healthcare.
That's so awesome, because like with my journey, I started sharing on social media like right away, and nobody knew. Dirty Skittles didn't know. She's my manager. She had no idea how depressed I was. But as soon as I started sharing my story, people thanked me, because now they didn't feel so alone and so terrified in their own journey. And that's really how the whole podcast came together, right? It's because we wanted to share those stories and give people resources and maybe a little levity, and giving them a place to feel that they are heard and that they're seen. And I couldn't do this without Dirty Skittles, because, she keeps me on my up and up. So
I think, I don't take any credit.
Well, you let me talk about squirrels, so,
That's true. That's true. I want to say that the both of you, right? Like you sharing it in a blog post, G-Rex, you sharing it on social media, just how brave that is, because I can't, and maybe this is the flight, right? This is the flight in me. I can't imagine doing that. It's just, I sometimes question it. Like, I'm like, I wonder if it has to do with like your time is your time, like when you're ready to do it, right? Like don't force yourself into this because, everybody else is, right? But that takes a lot of guts to be brave, because you're being vulnerable out in the open for anybody who's going to read this thing to consume and know who you are. And I think that is such a brave thing. So both of you, credit, like you're not only sharing your story, but you are bringing the humanity to it. You're putting a face to this thing that a lot of us feel, but you would never know because we're not going to tell you, right?
True.
We'll barely admit it to ourselves. So to put it out there for the world to see, I mean, Congrats. You guys are doing huge shit.
It took me a long time to get where I'm at. But, Paige, I saw this quote the other day and it's so fitting. And it says, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give voice to your struggles. Sharing your story might just be the key that unlocks someone's prison. And it's truth, right? Like people, but for me, it was hard, right? I needed help to be able to give my voice. I needed help to say it was okay, because at my age, I'm 60, we were all taught, you shove that shit down. You don't talk about it. You don't. And it gets to a point where it did on Christmas Day that I couldn't talk about it. I was just terrified. And, thank God 988. Thank God my wife was home. And thank God for some guardian angel. I don't know who it was, but thank you for whoever you were, because I'm here today and I'm alive. And I'm so very thankful for that, because I'm in such a better place. And I'm so glad that you're doing what you need to do, Paige, not just for yourself, but for others. And for your practice. You guys are badass.
I'm so incredibly proud of each and every person who works alongside me, my clients as well as my colleagues, because I have a group practice, and that also wasn't anticipated right off the hop. I was a year by myself, and then one of my girlfriends is like, "Hey, I want to hang out with you more, and I want to work with you." It was like, "Sure, why not?" And then within a year, it grew to 8 of us.
Wow!
And so
awesome.
it was like a massive learning curve. But my entire goal, because I've structured it a little differently than some of the other practices in Canada with some lower splits. I want them to feel so valued financially and socially, and just, I want to keep people in the field. I am so anti-burnout club. I am so anti-supremacy. I'm just very, how can we just acknowledge our humanness and live within our humanness? Because the more we keep trying to work outside of our human capabilities in a world that is very overstimulating, the more burnt out and more distracted, and the less we can actually enjoy, and the more fight or flighty we're going to feel, or even worse, getting into that state of freeze, that numbness, that inability to even experience emotions anymore because our body is shut down.
Yeah.
And while you were going through this, Paige, was your family supportive of you? Did you feel like you were being supported?
Yeah, I definitely did. My mom was in the healthcare field as well. And I know that all of their comments were so well-meaning, but they would say, well, why don't you just go back? If you're avoiding the place, isn't that going to be a problem? And I get exactly where they're coming from. And I totally get from where their generation knows that, just go do the thing. And then eventually you'll get used to it again. And I'm like, I don't really want to flood my system. I am doing exposure therapy, because exposure therapy is safely returning back, where I feel a bit yucky, but not crisis level yucky. Because if I had just been popped right back up on the intensive psych ward, my body would have panicked incredibly, because even after months of transitioning to even step foot in the hospital, for the first time I was in there, I sat down in the lobby. So I wasn't even on the floor of where I had my workplace injury. My heart rate shot up to 192, which is very high.
Holy
and I was heated. So that to me was a very physiological piece of measuring tool of looking at my Fitbit and going, oh, I'm really not okay. And that was months into the journey. And that was actually around the time I probably wrote that blog post, because there was something about seeing that physiological evidence. My body thinks I'm going to die here.
Yeah.
Was mind blowing.
Yeah. Because you're not, it makes it real, right? I can see this. And it's the two align, right? What I'm feeling and then what I see, it's a exact representation of something is wrong.
Yes, 100%. Because before I was maybe I'm just making too big of a deal out of it. But when my body, when I had that physiological body response there and I could see it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not bullshitting myself.
Right. You're almost you're acknowledging yourself, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. So my family was very supportive in listening to my story and my journey and everything. But of course, what they themselves and so many other people said. It was not just them of like, why don't you just go back and see how it goes? Well, I found out even in the middle of my exposure. And then eventually I was working again on that unit. So I was working on that unit by the end of my nursing career again. And so I was able to get there and be there. But I was so happy to be able to go back and have a different lens. And I was even that much more supportive of my colleagues. So after a violent incident, I'd be chasing them down to make sure they were okay. Because often they'll just continue to be in like their fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And, like, or that shutdown, like professional mode that we get into. And so then I was the one being like, at the end of shift, call me if something comes up, shoot me an email. I started to be the go-to person that people would text or call after workplace incidences and being like, what did you do? What was your journey? Like, what do I do? And that was such an honor to get those calls and those texts, because I know how scary it is to ask for help, but nobody would have known to come to me unless I said something, because everyone thought I was just taking time off work to go to school.
Yeah, I can see the exact same thing happening for like policemen and firefighters and even doctors, right?
Yeah. And for police and fire and ambulance, it's almost even like, and military, it's almost even an extra level, because like healthcare is a pretty like hardcore space. But but at least for us in the ER, we're often getting a call ahead of time from whoever is bringing somebody to us. So we at least can have a little bit of mental prep. We know we're in a safe place. We know, or safe enough place. We know that there's colleagues around, that there's policies and procedures we can do. First responders might get something through the 911 dispatch, but often they don't know the details because the person who's calling is calling in panic. And they don't even really know. They're not able to fully comprehend what's happening. And so our first responders, they have to shut down things in a whole other level. And working with those populations now as a counselor, I recognize and acknowledge that even that field is just even harder to tap into their emotional side, I would say, than even healthcare.
I'm thinking even in like a call center environment, right? Or in a service industry. For me, I'm a true empath. So I would take on everybody else's crap and not take care of my own stuff. And, being in that call center environment, you get beat up every day. Same in any like service industry or anything like that. And, now I have the tools and I can step back and, take a look at that. But I don't think a lot of companies give people those tools, right? To figure out you're in that fight or flight, you can't tell the customer to shut the F up on the phone. I mean, you want to, but you can't. You want to, but you're in the back of your head, like, I need my money and I need to be able to work and I want to tell this guy to shut the fuck up. But, we can't, and that's, I think as the world, the world's a scary place right now, right? And that we, not just as individuals, but like companies need to provide people with those tools, right? And not make them fucking pay for it, right? Give them a tool that they can use on a day-to-day basis, right? A stress ball is not going to fucking help. I'm going to tell you, right? I had a remember those like squeezy sand balls, right?
Yep.
Like one day I got so mad at work. I squeezed it so hard, sand went all over the carpet. Like we need to do better.
And companies need to acknowledge the importance of having an element of choice for their employees and the subcontractors that are at their company. Because if there's a policy that if someone starts screaming at you on the phone, we should have the absolute right to say, unfortunately, based on where this conversation is going, I can no longer continue unless you lower your voice.
Yes.
Because this is assault. This is verbally assaulting me. Because our very natural fight or flight response is so natural to be impacted by that.
Right.
Yeah.
And when we work in the service industry and we can't say what we want to say, we're stifling that fight or flight. And where does it go? It just lives in our body. We shut her down, we compress it, and then we don't go back to it. And it's so essential that we can acknowledge that kind of behavior. No matter how much I understand where people are in pain, if I'm screaming at someone, I believe that people have the right to tell me no. Like,
yeah.
Sorry, not sorry. If you're in customer service and I'm being a bitch,
yeah,
you have the right to say no to me. Like,
yeah,
because obviously I am being a bitch. Like,
yes.
if I'm mentally assaulting you, that's a problem. That's a me problem.
Hey,
I might be angry about something very validly, but that does not mean that I have the allowance to assault someone.
Yeah. Yeah. We're still humans.
We are. Every single one of us, we're still human.
Yeah.
Just a human with emotions and thoughts.
And families and things that we love doing. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So my kind of final questions for you is, what do you do today to take care of yourself and acknowledge your emotions and go through whatever you need to go through?
One of the most important things for my life that I keep noticing through different waves of when I'm like, well, I took on too much. Now I need to kind of settle down. One of the most important things for my mental health is something called time affluence, that fluidity and flexibility of time, that ability to have days where I can do whatever I want to. Those days where I have the capability to just do like a completely spiritually reflective day where I can do like, I'm currently doing a course by Dr. Edith Eger. It's a self-help and development course. And she's my absolute idol. She's an incredible woman. If you've never heard of her, please look into her. She's a Holocaust survivor and now a psychologist. And so she, like, I absolutely love the prompts that she has. So being able to do different types of like wellness education, listening to certain podcasts, being able, and I do a lot of things. Like I have a list of all of these different things I could. I have a backpack that's an art backpack, for example. So if I'm feeling called to do something more creative, I can. That is easily accessible for me. That if I can journal, that's easily accessible for me. Or even breath work. I go to a free breath work every single Thursday morning with one of my girlfriends. And there's all of these different little bits and pieces that I add. And it just intuitively do what feels good. I need the time affluence to be able to do what intuitively feels good.
Yeah. So you're taking the time, you're listening to yourself and doing what feels right. I love that. I have my fun questions, G-Rex, unless you...
No,
do you have any?
You get to do it because I stumped you last time.
I know. Okay. Paige, if you could go back to an earlier version of yourself and tell yourself a bit of advice, what would you say to yourself and how old are you when you go back?
I would go back to age 14. I'd go back to age 14 and I would tell her that she's a good person and that no matter what happens in this life, she is a good person, period. And I don't know how I'd allow her to integrate that into her system so that she believed me, but that was a message that I realized last year. That was an inner message that I'm not a good person. And after releasing that, it was probably one of the most freeing things I've experienced.
What do you think the 14-year-old version of yourself would ask you now?
Oh, she would be like, do we still travel? And or do we travel? And I'd be like, no, girl, we're too broke because the economy sucks right
now. No, girl, we're going to read National Geographic. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, we're going to be hitting up some Google Maps.
Yeah, Google Earthing, traveling. Yeah. Nice. Love
Although this year I am going to be going to New York in June for a women's conference. So there will be a smidge of travel this year.
What has been the hardest lesson that you've learned?
I'm going to make her cry again.
No, this is such a good question. Could you ask it one more time?
Yeah. What's the hardest lesson you've learned so far?
Hardest lesson I've learned so far would be, and it's one that I'm still processing as I continue forward in my journey, is not being as trauma informed as I could have been as a nurse and learning how to let go and release some of the traumas that I may have incorporated into people's lives based on the nursing practices that we were taught.
Ooh, that's a good one. Wow, that's a good answer. The last one, trying to think of how to word this. What do you hope, like if we could meet again in, let's say 3 years, maybe 2 years even, where do you hope or how far do you hope you've grown? So in what area of your life, if there's something you're currently working on, or if there's a lesson you know is on the cusp of like, I need to do this thing, where do you see yourself in that amount of time? Do you think that what lesson are you hoping to learn by then?
I'm hoping that I've figured out how to change the healthcare system. I'm hoping that what I do currently know and the people that I have started to make connections with, that I'm speaking worldwide about how we can enhance our healthcare systems, because we need help like now. And so I'm already on the trajectory of like increasing my public speaking and being on stages. And I'm going to be speaking at a hospital in Edmonton next month. And so it's coming to fruition. And I really would love for in 3 years' time to feel so honed in and be just helping more people on a bigger scale. That would be the absolute bomb.com.
That gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
I'm super excited.
I felt like it was happening. I was like, oh my God, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Yes.
I was even on stage on Thursday. I was at a women's event here in Kelowna, many women, and I was doing laughter therapy on stage and running around, getting to be absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous and engaging with an audience. And it was probably one of the most profound stage performances I've ever had. And because of my stand-up comedy background and also being a musician and things, I've been on on stage hundreds of times. That one took the cake. And I can only imagine it continuing to grow and enhance just more and more.
Love that.
So I have one question for you, Paige. What is a piece of advice that you could give to any of our listeners that are going through something similar to what you went through? Like, what is the one thing that they could do for themselves?
Acknowledge your humanness.
Okay.
Learn about self-compassion. Go to selfcompassion.org and learn about self-compassion. Dr. Kristen Neff has incredible work that she has done. And if we can't acknowledge our humanness and that we are human beings and that we are not going to be perfect, then we're never going to feel a sense of satisfaction, because we're always going to think we need to do more. But our humanness dictates how far we can go.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
Oh my God, this was such a good session. I loved it.
I feel like I just had therapy. Like, I'm so excited. I'm also excited for you, Paige. Oh my God.
Yeah, me too.
I'm feeling so warm and fuzzy right now. Like, I'm feeling all of the good feels throughout my body, like head to toe right now. I'm feeling that, just that exciting energy.
I got tingles. I think you literally spoke it out into the world. And I'm like, oh shit, this is fucking going to happen, bro. I'm so excited for you.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm G-Rex.
And I'm Dirty Skittles.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'd love to listen to your feedback.
We can't do this without you guys.
It's okay to be not okay. Just make sure you're talking to someone.